Yep, he dated this when he put it on.
Yeah, I know, but we always start with saying what day it is. It's April 8th, is yeah, April 8th of 2026. Today we are joined not only by Ross and Robert, but we have Jennifer here today, third born child of Ross and Beth Ellen Baldwin.
You want me to talk now?
Yeah, if you're ready to talk.
Oh yeah, what are we going to talk about?
Okay, well, I just thought we'd since Jennifer's here, let's talk on things associated with the family, okay?
Okay.
So we already did the blind date in a previous episode, so we don't need to necessarily do that. But you guys were married in the Salt Lake Temple.
We were.
I mean, we know that from a past session that it was your dad that taught you how to smoke, which is was a very big surprise to me. Taught you that you could smoke a cedar fence, and you and your
And we did.
10-year-old buddies
Yeah.
ended up smoking up that fence. But then obviously you went into the military, and they give smoke breaks there, so you came home from the military, I'm sure, with that habit. But yet you're married in the temple, so tell me how that worked out.
Well, I never thought that I wouldn't get married in the temple. That wasn't even a consideration. And of course, when your mother and I met, that was always our goal. So I had to stop, and I did, and that's not an easy thing. It's probably one of the hardest things I've ever done.
I would tell you that Mark Twain summed it up by saying, "Quitting's easy." He's done it 1,000 times.
Yeah, that's true, and I'm right there with him.
And then I don't think that necessarily applies to just smoking, but just life in general. There's lots of things we quit.
Yep.
So smoking was your big habit. I mean, obviously, have you ever been much of a drinker? You mentioned it. You mentioned that when you're in the military, everybody else would get sloshed, and you weren't much of a drinker. So
No, I really wasn't. I remember the last day I was intoxicated was August 6th, 1966, and I was in Nuremberg, Germany. I had just received orders that I was leaving my company, and they gave me a week pass, and my sister Anna was getting married, and so I had the tickets to go to the United States and to that wedding, and I went up to Nuremberg with some other guys, and I bought a fifth of Cuddy's Shark Scotch, and I drank it. I drank it all, and I don't remember a thing after that other than
so that was enough to get you hammered then, huh?
Oh boy. My next recollection was waking up and in a very, very, very hard bed, and it was I could hear cars going by, and I'm thinking, man, where am I at now? And I opened my eyes, the cars were going by about 4 feet from my head.
So you were laying on the side of the road. That was your hard bed.
It was in the curb. Obviously, I'd been rolled by somebody else because I didn't have my tickets, I didn't have my anything, and I got up and dusted myself off, and some MPs came by, and I flagged them down and told them what happened, so they took me into their place, and everybody jumped through a whole bunch of hoops to get me my tickets back and things back so that I could go to the States. And
how old are you in 1966? Obviously, you're 19 because you're born in 47, right?
Yep.
So obviously, the drinking age in Europe was a little different.
Well, the drinking age in the military is very different.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you have when you're overseas, you have what's called a Class 6 card. A Class 6 is alcohol, tobacco, tea, and coffee, and you had this punch card that you could go to the PX and you could buy liquor and cigarettes and coffee and tea. And I didn't drink a lot, but I always used up my Class 6 card because I found that it was an extremely good bargaining tool. if you had a fifth of whiskey and you needed a favor from one of the German nationals that was handling things that were tied into my job, which was supply at that time.
So you're greasing the wheels of democracy.
Yeah, I
the
remember
economy.
one time we were out on field maneuvers and our kitchen staff burned down a kitchen fly tent. This is a massive tent, and you know,
Like the mess tent in the show MASH.
and
Everybody
bigger.
meets in,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
everybody meets in that as like the cafeteria, assembly hall, that kind of thing.
Yep, it's a big tent. So anyway, they got a burn in it. Some fire got away, lit the canvas. Anyway, somebody's going to have to pay for that. And that tent would have been hundreds and hundreds of dollars. So I went up to the DX. DX means this is where we used to turn in things. And I went up to the DX and you could buy surplus, kind of like a DI. And I went up there and I bought a large piece of canvas, very big, large piece of canvas. And then I took it back to my office or supply room, and we refolded this big piece of canvas and put 3 different bottles of whiskey in this canvas.
So that when you turned in this big bag of empty canvas, they got the hint that
Oh, no question. We took it up and where I bought the canvas is really the same place that I turn it back in. And lucky for me, or not lucky, well, it worked out. When I got there, guess who's on the Dieter, the same guy that I bought it from, is checking stuff in. I thought, oh boy, I got a problem here. But I said, well, I want to turn in this kitchen fly tent. And he looked at me and he realized this is the same canvas I just bought. He says, it doesn't look like a kitchen fly tent to me. I says, oh, you got to look closer. You got to look closer. So he lifts up the first flap and there's these 2 bottles. And he says, yep, it's a kitchen fly tent.
that's pretty funny.
So we saved the mess people a real problem because the normal process would have been that they would have been brought up on charges, probably in Article 15, and they'd have had to pay for it. And it could have been even more than that if that would have been the case. But anyway, we saved the day on
But that was the last time you've got yourself 3 sheets to the wind and whatnot. So you've not been much of a drinker. So
No.
alcohol wasn't an issue. Tobacco was an issue when you were getting married, so you took care of that. Of course, there's 2 things that come in my mind. The legal age, even in this country, is controlled by states on when it comes to drinking.
Yeah.
And they didn't all unify until sometime in the 70s.
I don't know.
No,
Some
not
states,
even that.
like in the 80s or something, because the drinking age in one state was 18, another was 19, another was 21. They finally unified at 21 for everybody's. I don't know, 70s or 80s. But just like speed limit changed during the gas crunch, and everybody had to unify and that kind of thing. Let's see what else about that. I would also say that I remember being a kid in the 80s, and they came out and said that no longer is it acceptable to be less than a full tithe payer or have word of wisdom problems to go to the temple. So I suppose it had been up to the...
Tithing's never been a problem for me.
No, I know that, but I was just saying from a temple recommend requirement standpoint, they cracked down in the 80s where I guess bishops and stake presidents didn't have as much leeway to overlook certain things. But that wasn't your case. Nothing was being overlooked. You towed the line.
Yep.
Okay. And did your dad ordain you? You were 17 when you went in the military, so your dad had to ordain you a priest. I mean not a priest, elder, after you came home before you got married too, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you guys got married in the Salt Lake Temple.
Yep.
Did you honeymoon anywhere?
Yeah, we did. The first night we stayed at what was called the Roadway Inn. Now it's right on the off ramp of 6 South. I don't know what the name of it is now, but we stayed there the first night. We got up the next morning. We went over and we had breakfast over what used to be the Ramada Inn. Now it's something else. It was on Main Street and about 10th South, 8th South, something like that. And then we went to San Francisco, and we drove from Salt Lake over to Lovelock, Nevada, and we stayed in Lovelock, Nevada, the second night, and then we drove down to Oakland, and there was a hotel right there next to where the Oakland A's and the Coliseum were, and we checked in there, and we went to San Francisco. I remember at least once or twice. We went up and saw my brother Roy, who lived up at that time in Ream, which is just north of Oakland, and that was our honeymoon. I mean, it was. We came back and I went to work. You know, our first house was on Center Street in Bountiful.
And by house, you don't mean the house you purchased, where you...
No, it was an apartment. It was a rental. It's still there on Center Street. And it was all one level and one bathroom. And we moved in there, and we had a dog named Taco, who was a black Chihuahua. And I remember, our first holiday was Thanksgiving, which was just a few days later.
Yeah, because you got married on November 15th, 1968.
And I remember we had a turkey, and, there's two people and a dog. And believe me, poor old Taco, he got so much turkey that he couldn't walk. We overstuffed this dog. We're lucky we didn't kill him.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think turkey doesn't agree with dogs. Like there's something in it that almost poisons them. So.
You couldn't have verified that with Taco. He thought that was great. But that ended up being kind of his demise, because your mother was having problems, and the turkey wasn't sitting real good with Taco, so she ended up making that a Christmas gift to her mother. So Taco went from our house up to...
Oh, became Becky's dog or something?
I was going to ask you how you got Taco so quickly after getting married. Did someone already own him?
I think somebody gifted us that dog.
Okay.
It was just a puppy. It wasn't a full-grown dog by any means. But Taco was around for a while up at her mother's. And, I would go to work every day, and I was working then at Firestone, but I wasn't at Firestone. I was at Arbach Tire Center, which was another company. Fidesta, they called it, was a division of Firestone that provided tire centers to large department stores. And we were affiliated with Arbach's department store. And it was right on 4 South, right across from the City and County building. And that's probably a good story. And prior to getting that job, I was at the LDS Business College. And also, the days were very long for your mother. She wasn't too happy about sitting at home all day. And so I went to...
She was already done with beauty college when you got married?
Yeah. She was finished with the beauty college. She worked as a beautician for a whole week.
Yeah, I was going to say, I never really agreed with her. Every time she
no.
cut my hair, she complained about doing it because it just wasn't something that she
Yep,
she was overly gifted in and really didn't care for it much.
No, she didn't like that. So now she's just sitting home, and I'm going to work. And anyway, I get with the people at the LDS Business College, and I work it out for her where she gets a scholarship to LDS Business College. And the next thing, she didn't want to stay in the apartment because she was just there by herself. So we ended that lease, and we rented a place up on 3rd Avenue in B Street. And it's another little apartment, but this time we were on the second floor. It was a 2-bedroom apartment, and we had a carport out back. but she could walk down 3 blocks, and it was at business college. So, and I was still working at fire or at Arbax, and then it wasn't very long after that when Firestone decided they didn't want me running the Arbax Tire Center. I mean, I hired on as a salesman on Tuesday, and on Friday they made me the manager.
Yeah, we talked about in another session, there
Yeah.
was a walkout of some sort, and
Yeah.
they were like, hey, you can fog a mirror, how about you be management?
So I was for about 3 months, and then they transferred me over to Firestone proper, which was the main corporation. And they trained me through their management training program, and I wasn't around much for a few months there because I was doing these different training things, and it was good. I really enjoyed it. The training was very, very good, very, very professional, and I felt like I learned quite a bit. And then your mother decided she didn't want to go to school anymore. Now she wanted to go back to Bountiful, and she found this house that was on her way to her mother's house, right on Orchard Drive, and this house was a disaster. But I don't know what
But
she
it's
saw.
cute. She saw it. She liked it.
She
huh?
did, and we went and talked to them, and they said, no, we already rented it out. Well, a month later, we drive by, and the light's on. It's obvious that they're hauling everything out of it. So we stop and we talk to the guy, and yep, that tenant hadn't worked out, and they just destroyed the house. And your mother wanted that house so bad, we took it with all the crap, and then we had to clean it up, which we did. But it didn't take very long before she didn't like that one either, so that's when we went house hunting. We actually went house hunting as soon as I got out of school, and they awarded me the Granger store.
Okay, so Granger, that predates being incorporated into West Valley City, but that's
Yes.
where it is, right?
Yes,
Okay.
right across from Valley Fair Mall. At the time, Valley Fair Mall was under construction, and the only thing that was open for business was our Firestone store, a Pacific Finance store that was attached to the end of our store, and then on the corner there was a gas station. And the road hadn't even been paved yet. They had the curbing in, but they hadn't paved it yet. And the guy that owned the original property was a guy by the name of Estel Wright, and he was quite a farmer, and he was an old duffer. And the only traffic that was going by on 27th West there was his sheep and his cows when he changed pastures. They'd march them down there. But anyway, it was a good time. That's where I met Don Blackham. He was an attorney, and I met him through the Chamber of Commerce, and he and I became very, very close. He certainly is one of my heroes, and a good guy. He was a rough-talking, red-headed guy. When he was in college, he was a boxer, and he'd already lost all of his teeth. But he was a lot of fun. He and I used to go duck hunting, and he was kind of a special friend.
So he was responsible for you getting your 12 gauge and having your decoys and that kind of stuff, because he took you to do those things. I remember one time with Don Blackham, we were at a Winchell's Donut or something. You guys were having coffee, and he kept giving me like popsicle sticks to whittle, and I would whittle those down. So I do have a vague memory of him.
Yeah, Kristen remembers him, I think, too. He was, when Firestone ended, and I ended up getting into exterior builders. He incorporated our little business, and he was there with me the whole time, even when it got really, really ugly at the end. Don never ever stopped supporting me and doing what he could to help me, and he was just one of those special people was meant to come along to keep me going.
That's good.
Yep.
All right, so back to Mom.
Okay.
You guys are now house hunting to get out of that rental.
Yep.
And that's when you found the place in
It was called
Granger?
Valley Downs was the subdivision, and they were these little 2-bedroom, 2-bath,
Split
or one
entry,
and a half
right?
bath.
You had a little bit of a front porch stoop
Yep.
of steps that you go up to. As soon as you go in, there's stairs going up, there's stairs going down, right?
Yep, split entry they called it, and it was real popular at the time.
I'm sure, Jennifer, you have no memory of this place, right?
Nope.
Yeah, I have
None
vague
at all.
memories. Like, I think it was green in color, like
It
the
is.
house was green.
It's green today. The paint's still good.
I remember we didn't have much of a back fence. There was horse fields behind us, and there was barbed wire that was basically at the our back
Yep,
fence.
yep.
I remember the basement not being finished, but eventually Dad finished a bedroom down there for me, and I stayed all of like 2 nights down there. It was great during the day, but as soon as it got dark, I was too scared to be down there. But you got to realize that, I'm 3 years old, and he's
yeah.
trying to put me as a 3-year-old in the basement when everybody else is at the top of the house.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that was,
So this is that you bought that house while you're at Firestone.
yes,
You transition into exterior builders.
yes,
When did you have your episode with your grandfather? Was that exterior builders time?
exterior builders.
Okay, and that was as it was wrapping up, or because of the pressures you were under there with not getting paid, or what?
That was a very difficult time. Very, very difficult time.
Okay, we touched on this briefly before, but if you don't mind going into more detail, we can.
We can't, I don't mind, but I tell you, it's gonna be hard.
That's okay.
Okay.
Jennifer's here to hold your hand.
Well, okay. I was working, and I was working for a guy that was a crook, and but I thought I was making money, and then I didn't get paid, and it ended up me being in front of the jobs that I sold. I didn't get paid for them, so we didn't have any income. Your mother was working for Security National Insurance Company on 33rd South. And so I was really scrambling, and not only I didn't get paid, but some of the crews that worked with us didn't get paid. And this guy, Jim Ashpole, I got to make sure I say that right.
Because you had other names for him, right?
Oh, I sure did.
Okay, so Ash Pole,
Yeah, not,
right?
pole. Anyway, I had sold some jobs, and I had these crews, so I went out and built those jobs and left Jim to fight with his attorney that was his money man that realized what had happened. I mean, one day this attorney called me up and said, "Why haven't we got paid on this job?" I said, I don't know. I'll go out right now and collect it. I went out there, and they said, "Well, we already paid Jim,"
We already paid Ash Pool. We already paid Ash Pool.
yeah.
Okay.
And so I went out and was building these jobs. And the next thing I know is I get called to the state board for a hearing. And the reason is Ashpole went and filed a claim against me that I was
Not a general contractor.
not a contractor, which was true. I wasn't. But anyway, so we went up to make this hearing, and of course Don goes with me. But when we walk into this hearing, there's the director of contracting, and his name is Ross Urey, and I have no idea who he is. Just Ross Urey. And so I take my sign. It was like a courtroom, and he comes in. He sits down. He said, "Mr. Baldwin." I said, "Yes." He says, "Are you know a person by the name of Kelvin Baldwin?" I says, "Yeah, that's my dad." And this guy changed complexion like you couldn't believe. He became so angry. And he wheeled on Jim Ashpool, and just lit into him. Said, "Listen, this guy is Kelvin Baldwin's son. There is no way in the world that you're going to be able to convince me that he's done anything wrong." And I mean, he just takes Ash pulled apart. And finally, he says, we're dismissing that because there's only one person that can say who is a contractor. And he says, that's me. And I'm telling you, he's a contractor.
And it turns out this guy was a mission companion of your dad's?
Yep. And
Probably where you got your name from?
exactly.
So you met your namesake, huh?
Yep. And he dismissed Ash Pool, and then he said, no, you're a contractor, I'll give you your license today, but you got to do this and you got to do this. And of course, I said I'd do it, and I did. But that's how I got my contractor's license. And we did really well for a couple of years. And
You're out hustling and selling the jobs.
Yep.
You got a crew that's
I got-
doing the jobs, and
I
you're
ended
slowly
up-
expanding. And
oh yeah, we had 3 crews when it kind of fell on its face. But yeah,
And we did touch on that on a previous episode where you were refurbishing a bowling alley and the guy
Yep.
decided he was not going to pay you.
Yep.
Was it those pressures right there that brought you to the
Well, that
episode
was
with your
part of it.
grandfa-
That
with
was
your
part of it.
grandfather, or did that happen before then?
no, that was part of it. That is the time.
Okay.
Okay, it's right at the time when I had the run with Jim. I was starting exterior builders. Don had created the corporation for us, and anyway, I'm working as hard as I know how to work, and you and Kristen are just going from babysitter to babysitter to babysitter, and coordinating who's going to pick you up and where you're going to be and that kind of stuff. And probably the thing one of my worst memories was one night I picked up the kids. I was at the house, and I had an appointment to go pitch. And that's what I did in the evenings usually, was pitch work, see if I could get some more work. And I had an appointment to go out to Kearns on this appointment, and Beth hadn't shown up. And
So to hand off the kids.
yeah, and I'm really concerned. I need to this. We need to make this transaction. And Kristen said to me, she said, "Don't worry, Daddy. She doesn't love us anymore, but she'll come home." And she did. She came home, and she and I had a very strong discussion. And in that discussion, she finally said, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be, and that there's somebody else. And that was really hard.
And so it was with that and revelation, if you will, of what was going on in your marriage, that you were sitting in your pickup truck after maybe a night of pitching jobs, and
Yeah.
things just weren't going well, and you just sat there for a bit.
Yep. I went on that appointment, and I don't remember making the deal. That doesn't matter anyway. But when I got through there, I remember praying and what to do. And then all of a sudden, there's Grandpa. And
And that's Nathaniel
yep,
Baldwin.
yep. And I hadn't talked to him other than just saying hi or something in my life. But he called me by name, and I recognized him.
And you don't know what year he died, but needs to say he's a personage of spirit,
Yeah,
sitting in the
he was
truck
in-
beside you.
I think he died in like 60, 61, something like that. And again, my contact with him, that night was probably 99% of the contact I ever had with him in my life.
And that's because your own father and him were somewhat estranged, right? So that's why you never really were around him much.
Yeah. When we would go to Jed's house, that was on 27th
That's
South.
your uncle.
That's my uncle. When we would go to Jed's house, and Jed was single, he was a bachelor at the time, Grandpa lived downstairs. And my dad would come as a family. My dad would go downstairs, and Grandpa didn't even come upstairs. We would interact with Jed, and also I had an Aunt Thora that was my favorite aunt by a long ways. I mean, she really catered to us, and she liked us kids, and she was a school teacher in California, and she'd come to Utah for the Christmas break, and then when school was out in like May or June, she'd come back for the summer. So we would see her
Twice a year.
and she was a fun lady. She had some strange quirks to her. She liked to buy Christmas presents for the kids, but she would buy you stuff that was very expensive and the wrong size. And the reason why is because if it didn't fit, then we could go take it back. And she had a big party after Christmas where she would get the kids together and we'd all go downtown in her Buick and we'd go into the stores and return the item, and then we had that much to buy whatever we wanted. And she really enjoyed that.
Well, anyway, back to Grandpa.
Okay.
In the pickup truck. What kind of pickup truck was it? Just a regular cab.
No, it was a Kennecott Reject. It was a yellow Suburban that we used in the business, and it was a nasty vehicle. But I mean, Kennecott was done with it, and it really was done. But it worked good enough for us, so that's what I was driving at that time, was that Suburban, and your mother had a '80 Barracuda, orange one. That was what she drove.
Yeah, that would have been a fun car.
Yeah, that was.
Anyway, so you're in this pickup truck. Grandpa appears, and what does he say?
He told me his biggest concern he says, I need someone to do my work for me, because he was excommunicated. But they hadn't brought him back. They hadn't redone his work. And he was upset about that. And he made me promise that we'd get that work done. And then he told me how fortunate we are. Now we were so blessed. And he went into, as you know, talking about 3 sons. Well, I didn't have 3 sons. I had 1 son and a daughter.
In fact, you and Mom were figuring you were already done, right? You had
Yeah.
one of each.
Oh,
and
yeah.
what kids needed.
We had everything we needed. We were just trying to get ahead and move ahead. But and now that had been kind of slammed pretty hard when I got told, I don't want to be here. And but anyway, from there I went home and had a talk with your mother, and we decided we're going to make this thing happen and make this thing work. And I confront Gary, and
Who was the other guy?
Yeah.
He was the other guy, right?
yeah, his name was Gary Overbaugh. He's a big shot right now. In fact, his wife is the CEO of Security National Bank, or Security National Life Insurance. And he was also a pilot. He had a plane, and he was, anyway, and I just said, it's up to you, if you don't want to be here, you don't have to be here. And, but we decided we were going to put it together, and we did. And it wasn't very long after that when, of course, your mother got pregnant with Jennifer.
Yeah, you commented to me that it was that very night you thought maybe she was
Very,
conceived.
very well may have been, yeah. But anyway, here comes Jennifer, and your mother knew it was a boy. I kind of thought so too, because what I've been told. And when Jennifer was born, your mother was very upset that she wasn't a boy. She cried like crazy, and just she was really upset. And but after that, I think she realized that that's what it's supposed to be. And instead, I would say, if I were to judge, I would say that Jennifer was absolutely your mother's favorite. No doubt. And Jennifer was really special. She had a lot of energy. She had, she'd never take a nap. And she learned to talk so much faster, and she was always little. I remember one time going into Santa Cruz Bank, Santa Cruz County Bank, and I don't know why we were there, but we were there, Beth and Jennifer and I, and we walked through the door, and Jennifer spotted Roy all the way at the other end of the bank in the bank president's office. She took off, and she went over and jumped right up in the middle of his lap and said, "Hi, Uncle Roy." And anyway, I remember President Reese, who was the stake president and also the president of the bank, commenting about it, how little she was for how big she talked. And
No, Jennifer, you were like reading. You went into kindergarten reading on a second grade level.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
you were heads and shoulders above the rest of the kids there.
yeah,
Probably head and shoulders above me, and I was in second grade. So.
I had older brother and sister and older sister who liked to play school. And
Yeah.
so, whatever you guys were doing, I wanted to be doing.
So where did the name Jennifer come from? Because I know you took 3 names into the marriage.
I did. I don't know. I'm gonna say that was your mother's pick.
I think it was because I was supposed to be a boy that they didn't have one picked out in advance.
That might be
Well,
accurate.
I think you did. I think she told me you did. I was going to be Michael.
Well,
Oh yeah, if you'd have been a boy.
if
Yeah.
I was supposed to be Michael if you talked to Mom, but Dad, I mean, not to detour the conversation, but Dad came with 3 names: Robert, Richard, and Tracy to the marriage. And it took
one more.
Oh, you have one more too?
Yeah, there was another one that was Anthony.
Okay, well, needless to tell you, it took three daughters before he finally got Tracy to stick, because Mom had her way with Kristen and with Jennifer, obviously.
Yeah.
But because
Well, Kristen, I think was both of us. We had a friend whose name was Kristen, and she was very, very popular in high school. She was the girlfriend of one of my very, very closest friends, Dee Weininger, and we liked that name together, and we liked Kristen together. Kristen has since passed. She's been gone for quite a while, in fact, but that's where Kristen came from.
so it was pretty easy to decide on
Yeah.
Kristen's
Yeah.
name, and then me, you've had some friends that you grew up with for Robert and Richard,
Yep.
and then Jennifer. So Jennifer is born. She's small. And got any other good stories about Jennifer before we move back to the
No, other than I will say that Jennifer and Gary were kind, and they weren't happy when Beth and I broke up, but they reached out a little more than pretty much anybody else at the time. It was, I'm sure it was a tough time, but Jennifer has extended out and tried to befriend and tried to help and tried to be part of, and I mean she's had her days when she's not been cooperative and she's not been friendly and she's barked at me, but I don't think she's ever barked at Becky. But
Becky, as in your current wife?
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure that wasn't like a Freudian
no,
slip.
I do that, as you know, but
I want to make sure I had the right wife.
no,
or something.
she's extended it out, and I appreciate that because it's not easy. It's not easy when you try to put two families together. It's not easy. I feel like I'm an expert in that because I've been through at least 4.
And maybe
of those.
we'll eventually get there in our conversations, but
Well, one of the things that I would maybe like to hear some stories about if you're going to talk about me since
Yeah.
I'm here.
Sure.
But I know I've been told that, like, I used to just scream and pass out.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, when you would get upset, and when you'd get upset, you would do just that. You'd cry to the point you didn't have any air left, and it just, needless to say, the first couple of times it was Panic City, but then it got to be, just give her a second, she'll be here in a second.
yeah, Mom and Dad weren't panicking about it. They'd experienced it before, but anybody who was around you would be
Oh,
like, do
yeah.
we need to call an ambulance? And they're like,
Yeah.
no, she'll come back.
Yeah. But it was, in my opinion, it was, you just flat ran out of air. And you just blacked out. Yeah. But, yeah.
But that was
Because
like,
I have zero memory of that.
well,
So
I
clearly outgrew it by the time
Yeah,
I
right.
could remember.
I would think that was like a Terrible Twos, 18 months, a year old type thing, not, 3,
No.
4,
No,
5
no.
years old type thing.
No.
By then you're a little more mature and you can
Yeah.
talk and discuss the merits of why you're angry and that kind. But when you can't express why you're mad, you just work yourself up to the point where,
Yep.
well, down you go.
Well, Robert, one of the things I remember about Robert was a real colicky baby. He would get crying and couldn't console him, and the doctor prescribed paregoric, which is horrible. And I'd have to give him this paregoric, and I was dying because I knew how terrible it was. But
Jamming it down my throat.
yeah, that's basically what it was. And then the other thing that we found is we could take him out, put him in the car, and just go for a ride, and he'd calm down. But yeah, there's many nights when he's in pain, obviously in pain, and I don't know how to relieve it. And that's a horrible feeling for a parent. When you just can't find what it is. You can't stop it. Yeah.
That and tomatoes.
Yeah, tomatoes. Oh, he get a sunburn tomatoes. He liked tomatoes, and he'd eat tomatoes, and then the juice affected his skin, and he'd get a rash. I mean, it was not fun.
Yeah, I was told that I would eat a tomato and cry, and then I'd eat another tomato and cry.
Yeah, that's true. He
it's burning my
didn't stop liking tomatoes, but we finally figured it out. His face was burning.
Just the acid from.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I still love tomatoes to this day, unlike Russell, who can't stand tomatoes. And
Yeah.
I don't know that he gets burned by them or anything like that. But
Well, I don't remember that for Russell. But
Oh yeah, he hates tomatoes.
he doesn't like tomatoes, which is funny because he worked at a pizza joint, and
Yeah.
so
But they're okay on like pizza sauce is it.
Sauce.
that's the extent that he can do.
Yeah, I don't even think he'll do salsa.
He may even prefer an Alfredo sauce or something over a red sauce. But anyway, so let's rewind back to the Granger years. Along comes Jennifer,
Yep.
and so Jennifer and Tracy are very close together in age. They're just a little over a year apart.
Yep.
So you decided to try for son number 2 again?
No. No. We did. We got to keep going. I mean, at that time now, Tracy shows up, and that's right at the end of Exterior Builders.
Exterior Builders falling apart.
It did, and that was a very difficult time too, because I didn't want to stick the people that we had working, and we had jobs in progress at the time, and now all of a sudden we didn't have the money to pay them, and so I spent a little time in working to get their jobs done and to pay out the bills for those people, and then I bankrupted
Then
the
you
rest.
Close the shop.
Yep, and I went to California, worked with Roy, and you and the family stayed here, and Tracy was just pretty much brand new then.
How long were you out in California by yourself before the family eventually joined you?
I think about 4.5, 5 months.
Okay.
Um,
And you weren't at that little motel you
No,
rolled up
no.
into for
I was
more
there
than a
for
week.
1 week.
One week.
Yeah. Now, then what happened is I run into a guy at Lions Club. One of the things that I did when I went to California is I didn't have any money. What little I had, I could have stayed with Roy, I guess. But instead, what I did is I went to Lions Clubs. I got the register for all the Lions Clubs in that East Bay, and I chartered them out because some were breakfast clubs, some were lunch clubs, some were supper clubs. And I made a schedule so I could eat breakfast at this club, I could eat lunch at this club, and dinner at this club. And I started going around, and when I'd go, of course, I was a visitor coming from the Magna Lions Club.
So you had joined Lions Club while
Oh, yeah.
in
Don and I were in Lions Club in Magna.
Okay.
Anyway, so that's where I decided on that. So one of the very first ones I went to was Alameda. And when I went to Alameda's Lions Club, it was a morning club. Their president was a guy by the name of David Arp. And he was a policeman for the city of Oakland. And a young guy, and he had a house up in Oakland that was a 3-bedroom, really nice old house. And I met him, and he said, well, you can come. I told him I was staying at that motel. He said, no, you got to get off of that. You can come over and stay with me. He said, it's no big deal. And so I did. I went over and I moved in at his house, and it was really a nice house. It was really, 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 really in need of getting cleaned up. I remember that he had a doily on this big fancy table that he had, and the table was all set up with like it was ready for dinner, except there was dust all over it. And the dust was so thick that you couldn't see where this doily, is my word, top covering, it looked like it was flat, but it wasn't. It was actually a covering. You went into the kitchen, the every single pot, pan, whatever it was in that sink, and there was no place to put anything else. I looked in the dishwasher. It was still full from dishes that he hadn't washed yet. Opened the fridge, and it was very bad. And, and out in the living room, he had a great big saltwater fish tank that didn't have any fish in it, but there were some skeletons on the bottom where there used to be fish.
So
Anyway,
this,
he
this
was,
guy wasn't much of a caretaker
No.
of his property or his
So-
animals or anything.
so I kind of made my way by cleaning the place up over a period of time. I got it looking pretty nice for him. But I virtually never saw him. He'd come in at night, and one night, this is the one night I remember, he came in and I said, "Where you been?" He says, "Well, man," he says, "we had a suicide." I said, "Oh, yeah." He says, "Yeah. This guy, he stabbed himself 12 times. He shot himself 6 times, welded himself in a 55-gallon drum, and jumped into the bay." I said, "What?" He says, "Believe me, if you go down and find cause of death on this guy, it's suicide." When we found him, this guy is so bad that it was like a holiday for us
And
just
what-
to be rid of him.
What was your landlord's occupation?
He's an Oakland police
Oh, it was
officer.
a police. I missed that somehow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Suicide, huh?
Yeah, he was quite a guy. He had a girlfriend named Sunday. I remember that was her name, and in fact they were engaged. But Sunday, or when he had a date with Sunday, he'd come in. He's all in his uniform. He'd go right, take all of his clothes off, go in, go jump in the shower. He'd come out, and a few minutes later, a delivery guy would show up, and he had a complete set of clothes. And he'd put those clothes on, and then he'd go on his date. And in the hall, there was piles of laundry. And once or twice a month, his mother and sister would come over and load up all that laundry and take it all out and wash it, iron it, bring it all back, put it all back and right where it's supposed to go, and then he'd start over again. He never did, if he didn't have clean clothes, he just bought them. But he was a single guy and doing well. In fact, I do believe that you might ask about him because, there was a point when Becky, your aunt, came down to stay with us. And when she did, we put her to work at Canal Oldsmobile, and she went out on at least one date with Dave Arp.
I recognized the name. I had heard the name before.
Yep.
Well, when the family finally came out and joined you, is that when you rented that house with all the rocks in the front yard and the
Yep.
pool, a couple of doors up?
Yep.
It was an HOA or something?
That one I
Yeah,
remember.
that was Palmyra Place is the street. I don't remember the number, but I think it was like 123 or 122. Some of the others I remember.
Go behind, yeah.
But
Goodbye, Will. That's our nephew and his grandson, Will. He's sitting in and then he has to go off
Yep.
to work, so he's...
yep. Where was it at?
We were talking about Palmyra
Place. Palmyra Place. That was a neat house. And our next door neighbor was Pete Banaszak, the football player. And
And he played for what, Oakland or something?
yeah, he played for Oakland.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was a good guy. And another one that was down the hill was Gene Tennis. He was the catcher for the Oakland A's at the time. But the Pete Bannis story is a good story. One day I just come home from work and knock on the door. And I open the door and there's Pete Banaszak. He says, "I'm your neighbor next door. You and I got a problem." I said, "What?" He says, "Well, every week on Sunday, you mow that little patch of grass out back."
Mm-hmm.
Well, I work on Sundays. And he says, "When I get home on Monday, I don't feel like doing anything, but my wife is always on me about your grass is cut and my grass isn't." And he says, we got to come up with a solution. And now I'm laughing a little bit. I said, "Well, you can always just cut my grass when you cut yours." And he says, yeah, I can do that. And he did
So he'd come over and cut your grass.
on Wednesday. Yeah. Because, he played football on Sunday. On Monday, that was their day off. And a lot of times, he was a running back is what he was.
Yeah, tired and sore.
Yeah. And that was his day off, and his wife wanted him to cut the grass. So anyway, but he was a nice guy. I went over to his house one time when there was a bunch of guys over there, and I got to meet Otis Sistrunk. I met Tim Hendricks, Ray Guy. I met the Snake, they called him. He was their quarterback. I didn't like him. And most of them
So
didn't.
he was aptly named the Snake, huh?
Yeah, yeah, he was. Can't think of his name right now, but anyway, that was dude. And then Gene Tennis, he was the catcher for Oakland when they were really winning. I think they won 3 World Series in a row, I believe. But anyway, he was a customer also at Cannell's. Dean Weaver, the dealer at Cannell's, was starstruck, and he did all kinds of crazy stuff to impress Gene Tennis, and a lot of times it meant me driving Gene Tennis's car into work to get it serviced and leave him my car for the day. But anyway, that was a good place. And then the next thing that happened was, of course, is the strike at Cannell's. And when the strike happened, I couldn't go to work because we were on strike. And Weaver, the dealer, he and I had a contentious relationship. He didn't like the fact that when I showed up, all of a sudden, Roy started getting a little more independent. And in fact, I even explained to Roy that you don't have to work 6 days a week. You can take a day off like everybody else. And he finally did. He started taking Wednesdays off. But Weaver always saw me as a threat, and probably rightfully so, because I was making it so that he wasn't everything to Roy. And one day or he came out to me on the picket line, and he really got after me. He said, "How could you possibly be here picketing? Your brother's inside. Why would you do this to us?" And I said, "Well, I don't have any choice. You can't let me go to work, even if I came in." And I said, "And I don't have the money to pay someone to do it, because if you're in the union, you put some time on the picket line, or you have to pay somebody else to put the time on the ticket line." And I didn't have money to do that. And his son wasn't out there picketing. His son, he paid the money for his son not to be out there. But anyway, he really was getting on me. Anyway, I said, "Dean, is it okay with you? Can I use your phone for a minute?" He says, "Sure." So I walked into the dealership, I picked up the phone, and I called Ceremony Oldsmobile and asked to talk to Tom Price, who was the dealer. And I'd met him a few times. And I said, "Tom, over here we're in a strike, and I can't go to work, and I need to work." I said, "Can I, any chance I can hire on with you?" He says, "Where are you at?" I says, "I'm at Cannell right now, sitting on the showroom." He says, "Sit right there. I'll be right." And the next thing I know, we got one of the lot guys from the store pulls up in front of me and comes in and says, "You Mr. Baldwin?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "This is your new driver."
Your new demo, huh?
Yeah, my new demo, 98 coupe. And I jumped in it. Adios. I went over to Ceremony, and I worked over there for about 7 months. But while I was there, I was salesman of the month 3 months in a row, and then he made me used car manager, which was a terrible decision. And I tried to tell him that, but he didn't. And our used car office was beautiful. It was this glass box.
Not to cut you off, but you
Oh, yeah.
have 15 seconds before
Anyway.
it does cut you off.
All these beautiful plants, all the instructions how to take care of them, and I killed them all in 90 days.
Yeah, I think we touched on that before. All right, well, we're coming back for another session after lunch, so